will start. Can you hear this? Yeah. So I'm going to choose a couple of questions from a packet called Freedom, which I believe was the one for June, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe July, one of those. And it's question number 4 and question number 12. And I'm just going to talk to you about how I responded to these questions and where it took me. So question 4 is aging trying to offer you a new form of freedom? And what keeps you from accepting the offer? T.E. So, I'm in my 80s. Good question for me. And then question 12 was, have you ever felt trapped in someone else's story? So, as I look at my later years, I think about the fact that you get very aware that life has a time limit when you're in your 80s. If anybody's in your 80s and feels this way, raise your hand. Okay, quite a few of us. So that makes it all the more important to appreciate and cherish the time that we have, especially if we're healthy enough to actually do that, but even if not. So I think the question is very important for me because I do want to look at what keeps me from accepting the offer. And that leads me to question 12, have you ever been trapped in someone else's story? I think for a very, very long time, I was trapped in my mother's story, not my own. My mother's story, in brief, was of a woman who was a child of immigrants. Her parents were Czechoslovakian and came over here around 1903. She was born in 1914, grew up in a very European household, but also felt, and she told me this, that like she was the daughter of a poor immigrant, quote unquote. And consequently, she didn't feel a lot of a certain kind of entitlement or self-esteem. She also felt that it was her responsibility to kind of follow the rules about how you lived your life, both as a woman and as a married person. So she always fought against what she called conformity, but she also tended to try to conform and be a good girl and kind of play by the rules. And that inhibited her, I think, from making choices that might have been different if she felt more freedom. So I very much relate to the idea of freedom and also the idea that she was somewhat trapped, as many women were. And what's helped me to look at her life is to try to put it in context and understand that in those days, in that part of the world, which was the Midwest in the 50s and a small town, that many women didn't feel a very strong sense of entitlement, and including her. So what I'm trying to do is free myself up to live my own kind of freedom. And that particular kind of freedom actually means letting go of the need to achieve, to accomplish, to be first, to be excellent at everything I do, and for goodness sake, just relax in my own home and sit down and read a book. Not so easy for me to do. Sit down in my own home and read a book. So that's my goal, that's my mission. I'm going to give the mic to Chris.
So for my packet, I chose the month that had joy. I really enjoyed this one, so I wanted to share it with everybody. The way Scott Taylor set it up was, it's not just about the joy we find, but it's about the problems we encounter in life that we can cope with better by turning towards joy. And so out of a lot of options, I picked a few. I'll tell you about a few of them. The one is, what is your box of joy? Making a list of things that bring you joy, about memories from the past or even from the present. So my list included quite a few things. I had fun with this. I just sat with it and kept thinking of one thing after another. So it's not necessarily in order of importance, but my box of joy included music, art, nature, people, animals, the ocean, playing the fiddle, playing the dulcimer, baking, making food for others, traveling, the redwoods, sunrises, bugs of all kinds. I like insects. Flowers, growing my own veggies, singing, books, learning new things, curiosity about the world, and seeing lives change in the work that I do, seeing science expand our knowledge about the universe, looking through telescopes to see light that happened tens of millions of years ago and is just now reaching us, a real time machine that we have in our lives. So that was my box. And a few other questions that I answered really had to do with the ingredients in that box. One question was, what simple joy rescues you over and over again? And I had to say, in my life, that was music. And if I can read my handwriting. There are particular albums that I go to at times when I'm having a tough time. There's others that I go to when I want to dance, and I feel wonderful. I love to learn new pieces of music. I love to sing by myself and now with others. And of course, listen to others play. Another question was, has choosing joy been an act of survival for you? Because that can be true for a lot of people. We have to turn to joy to deal with what life has presented us. And I said, yes, all my life. As a child, I loved music and nature then, and found it both of them very nurturing and peaceful. I would wander the fields and woods where I grew up and felt I really got an experience that another life existed apart from what I knew. Animals nearby, horses on nearby farms, there were trees to climb. It all was very affirming of life for me. And then by my teenage years, music became, I would say, an obsession that mirrored my inner world and enlarged my world and my perspective of it. So those are my questions that I answered for joy.
So this on? Okay, I chose the packet on imagination.
Hold it like this.
I chose the packet on imagination. And the packet begins by asking us not to imagine the future, but rather to think about the question, how does imagination shape the way we deal with the present? As an English teacher, a former English teacher, I saw this question as really being about asking, what are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and our lives, and how do they shape our lives? And are those stories working for us, or maybe time for a new story? So I spent some time, this is the key part, one of the key parts of Soul Matters, and that is doing your homework. So I spent some time, places like in the shower and taking a walk, doing this homework, thinking about what are the stories that shape my life. And I came up with one that took me by surprise. It might surprise you too, that I found interesting, and this is the one I shared with my group. And that is that as a little kid, I believed that I was invisible. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think I ever thought that was literally true, but as the good kid in the family, I think lots of times the good kid in the family is invisible because everybody's worrying about my little sister who's making it all about her. But I realized that by telling myself I was invisible, I gave myself permission to do the greatest stuff, like lurk under the dining room table during Thanksgiving dinner, after dinner, and listen to what the adults said. I learned just a heck of a lot about adult life, about the family, and because I was invisible, they didn't have to edit. But that's just kid stuff, right? Well, I'm not sure. I realized that as an adult, and I bet every woman in this room probably knows this, and probably some others too, as a professional, I could walk into a meeting, look around the room, and be invisible. If there were men in charge and the men were the majority, everybody looked up, and then went back to what they were doing. I was invisible. I could have been annoyed by that, and I'm sure lots of times I was, but other times I thought this was fairly entertaining, kind of like the adults. I could be an anthropologist. I could observe what they're doing. So I realized that invisibility is kind of my superpower. Oh, and anybody here with gray hair knows how to be invisible. Walk into the Apple store. So I asked myself, is invisibility working for me? And I thought, there was a question at the end of the packet that really brought me up short. It asked the question, has age widened or narrowed your imagination? And I thought, maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe it's time for a new story. Maybe invisibility is a superpower, but maybe I need to leverage some of the things I observed in my invisible anthropologist role and see what I can make of taking on a more visible role and sharing that. I'm sitting here doing this right now in part because of that reflection that came to me from from Soul Matters. So thank you, Soul Matters, and stay tuned. We'll see what I do next. Yipes.
Hi. I kind of wanted to go last, so thank you, panelists, because I want to speak to the people who are thinking, yeah, but I wouldn't do that. I couldn't do that. So I wrote this for you. One thing that I love about working through the Soul Matters monthly packets is that no matter how I'm feeling with regards to the theme, I know that part of the brilliance of the Soul Matters curriculum is that I can always find an activity or option which will allow me to explore the theme to my own personal comfort level. For example, this past year, the themes of deep listening, invitation, story, imagination, and freedom felt comfortable for me to explore. The theme of joy, as I shared during a reflection in April, was a subject really new to me, and the material in the Soul Matters packet really helped me to learn about my own personal experience of joy, that I actually had one, and it helped me to learn and to go deeper. However, the themes of resiliency, repair, and trust were themes which I struggled. I kind of saw the monthly topic and I thought, ooh, I don't know about that. Well, it's because my own personal history, they felt perhaps a little too close to some of my core issues, which I'm still working to heal. However, because of the richness of the options for each monthly theme, I still was able to work with, learn, and find meaning from even the more personally sensitive themes. For example, when I first read the introduction to March's theme, Trust, I actually wrote at the top of the page, this is the first intro that doesn't fully make any sense to me. What I realized was my experiences in my life had made me lose trust that the world and the people in it were safe, were trustworthy. I wasn't sure I would be able to work with this topic, but I decided to quickly read through the various spiritual exercises to see if something felt doable. The first line of option A, what do you turn to, intrigued me. It read, we trust more things than we realize. Oh yeah? I thought, wanna bet? But I read on. One of the ways we reveal and remember that is to think about what we turn to when things get hard, stressful, confusing, or even frightening. That's what this complete the sentence exercise is all about. Then there were a series of statements to which we were to name what we would turn to in these situations. It said, quote, "The goal is to remind yourself that life has surrounded you with more sources of trust than you can imagine." I wasn't sure how I'd feel during the exercise, but I decided I'd try it and see what I came up with. Here are some of the prompts and my responses. Can I turn my thing off? Because I'm so happy. Yeah. Okay, here we go. When my path turns uncertain or rocky and my footing is unsure, I turn to my practices of grounding, shielding, and mindfulness. When life asks me to go, but my fingers cannot release their, when life asks me to let go, but my fingers cannot release their grip, I turn to deep, grounding breaths and the practice of radical acceptance. When my spirit feels drained and dried up, I turn to nature, music, making art. When rage clouds my vision, I turn to and honor the sadness underneath. When a dream of mine dies, I turn to memories of what once was and gratitude for what is. When I am tender and long to sit with my pain rather than have it fixed, I put on warm, soft, comfy clothes and fix myself a cold glass of milk and some warm tomato soup. When flawed and fragile human beings hurt or disappoint me and I want to keep tethered to compassion for them, I turn to the Hawaiian Ho'oponopono practice. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. When I long for the transcendence of wonder, I turn to the night sky, theater, or I spend some time with a young child. When I miss those who've been taken from me by death or time, I turn to the solace of shared experience with my grief group. When life opens a long closed door but my feet fear leaving the familiar, I turn to faith in the path I cannot yet see and the belief that things are working out as they're meant to. And when life turns hard and I need to feel something tender and soft, I turn to my kitties, my sensory box, or memories of my mother holding me on her lap in her big, cozy orange chair. This exercise turned my focus from what I didn't have to what I actually did. It reminded me of what I could trust in. So when life turns challenging, what do you turn to?
I just want to add a little piece about the structure of the Soul Matters group. My first introduction was at a different congregation, and what really worked for me as a somewhat reluctant speaker in the group is that when we had our turn, everyone sat quietly, respectfully, and listened. There's no crosstalk, there's no interrupting. And when we're done, there's a moment, maybe a half a minute or so, when everyone just reflects on what they've heard. And then the next person who wants to speak, speaks. There's no particular order where we have to go around in a circle or anything like that, or even have to speak at all. And at the end, when everyone's had their turn, we then have time when we talk about how each other's reflection had impacted us. And we have maybe another half hour sometimes of being able to talk about that. So it's a really wonderful experience, and I think that that part of it is important. That structure makes it different from everyday conversations or group interactions. So I wanted everybody to know that.